It's actually a comedy show, Alex. That's all I need.
Oh, good. This is green.
Let me just double check this is going to autoplay. Oh, we're good.
It smells like carpet.
All right, so yes, this is our talk on running a demo on Steam. So for context, we were in the Steam festival for the October, which was autumn, I believe. Yeah. And yeah, we're going to sort of tell our journey about that. So we're Melonhead Games. We're a small studio here. We develop in Unreal Engine. We've been working on our flagship game, Rooftop Renegade, for on and off, I'd say about 3 years now. But it's all been very part-time along the way. And this festival we were in was our first live festival, not in person. We've done a few conventions. We've done 2 AppCons and a PAX, and running the demo online was a very different experience. So firstly, I want to talk a bit about our scope of our demo. So first, we had this demo that we wanted to make, and it was going to be like a single player, new user experience like no other. We were going to have the multiplayer in there ready to go, the party mode that we've got, which is local only. We don't have online multiplayer. We're going to have our loadout system implemented so that people could sort of replay levels in different ways, learn new things. And we were hoping to have a leaderboard system, and that was going to be tie in some of our marketing. And next we've got Alex, who actually handles our marketing. Going to talk a bit about our pie in the sky goals for marketing.
Sure. I'm reading this with you guys, so we'll do this together.
You wrote it.
Yeah. The audience we wanted to hit. Who were we waving our arms in front of? Yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. So it's, knowing that we had limited time with the demo, obviously the first answer is anyone that we can get. We don't have our main audience yet. Like, we've got social presence and stuff like that, but until the game has reached a massive amount of people, we don't have what we would consider our core audience. So right now, it's anyone who wants to hear it. Streamers being the new frontier of marketing. They're the ones to contact. We went about it probably the wrong way, but we'll talk about that. And then, yeah, fans of platformers and racing games. So that, I guess, would be handled through the social medias. Also, thing to say with this campaign, for this demo, was it was free. We didn't put any money behind it. So we were limited by how far we were going to get these. It was all power of hashtags. And this isn't me.
Bye, Alex.
Bye.
Thanks for going. Actually, no.
Yeah, so I just want to talk a bit about it. So we had our plan. We knew what we wanted the demo to be. The next step was all obviously getting the demo to what we could get it to. And that initially started with what issues were in the game we needed fixing. So initially it came down to the project. Through the 2.5 years we've been working on it at this point, just throwing things in and experimenting, the project was quite disorganized. So trying to create a cohesive build that we could push, that wasn't just one that we had hidden under a table at the convention, one that we're actually going to push online. There was a lot of organization that had to go on in the project as a whole. Primarily, a lack of style guide led to that. So we've set up a whole style guide now moving forward.
What's a style guide?
Style guide being how you would name particular files, where files would be placed, just general project housekeeping. The next game issue we faced was a lack of proper tutorialization. Now it's really easy at a convention when you're sitting there next to the person playing to explain to them what they need to do and correct them if they're doing something wrong. However, we noticed in our game, we've been doing that a bit too much at conventions. So when it came to actually pushing a demo out, we needed to make sure the people who were playing it knew what they needed to do. A few other systems in place, such as an option system, to make sure people can configure it to run on their hardware, and various bug fixing that you would expect to come across with any kind of gameplay changes. And then the next step obviously being how are we going to tell people about it? How could people hear about it? And some of the issues we encountered with that being, we didn't have a particular history with streamers. There wasn't any friends, like high profile friends we could call upon. There were a couple who streamed for us, but they weren't particularly high profile, so we were limited in our reach in that regards. And news outlet coverage was quite minimal as well, and not being able to chuck any money at it, we were kind of limited by who would take up the story for free. And yeah, in that kind of tight budget, there was a bit of a high risk there. your take on the events?
No, that's all, Alex.
Okay. Let's remember this. Okay, sorry. Events, timing the demo. Oh, okay. So we knew we wanted to do a demo, and we knew that a certain thing happened last year that halted everything. So it was basically to Google what's running, like where can we hold game events and stuff like that. Shout out to a developers of ours who were working on, friends of ours, Metalheads. They were always appearing at different festivals. So I was going, okay, then where are they finding them and all this stuff. So one was, we found out the Steam Festival's coming up. So we're like, okay, we can do that. But one that came out of left field was this one called GDEX in Ohio, which is basically Ohio's version of AvCon, except Ohio has like 8 times the population of us. And is a lot smaller than us, so you'd have to assume that they're all talking about something like video games. So we figure that's usually that event would be locked out to us because why would someone from Ohio come to an AvCon, So because this is online for the first time ever, I was like, can we put our thing in? And they're like, absolutely, $50. And it means we reach a audience we'd never otherwise be able to reach.
Being Australian as well was like a bit of a talking point when we did our stream.
Oh yeah. That's the thing. Yeah, so we did a game stream, and people were very curious. How can Australia exist on a flat Earth? But one of the good things that came out of GDEX was who's over here, John. He got nominated for Best Original Music in the whole event. So that badge now sits proudly on our Steam page. And then so we wanted to line up with those, and GDEX was on the same weekend as Steam Autumn Festival, so we knew we had those. Then we had plans for a private demo in future. We didn't know no one knew the Steam Winter Festival is going to happen. They just told you it's going to happen roughly around this date. So we were going to line up a demo anyway in February of a more beefed up version of the demo, but it was actually going to, as I said, it's going to be private. So it was only going to be for streamers to promote the game, to get, show off some new features, brand it their way, and just get the hype going in a way that we couldn't. That's not
So we had our plan, we had our events lined up and everything. But along the way, as Alex and George both mentioned, there are a few things that we didn't account for when we first set our scope for our demo. So we had to start cutting features out of that demo. And eventually we settled on focusing on what we thought would get us the most reach would be the streamers. And the best way to get them, especially with the year being what it was to have the single player challenge mode runs. And so we focused in our scope on that. A lot of back and forths about how many bugs do we have to fix versus how many features can we actually get in. But it, all came to a point where we, just decided to focus on the one thing and let the other features hold off for their own events or things like that. So that, anytime we launch a new demo or something playable, it would be highlighting one specific thing rather than spreading it out as much as we'd hoped. And then came the day of the demo. So things went very wrong very quickly on the day of our demo. We had, as part of our scope, cut out of the Steam Festival, realizing that at the time Steam was saying you could only join one of them. So we decided to join the February Festival with a larger demo than the October Festival. So we, after opting in through Steam's systems, we had opted out. And we checked with them and it was all fine. On the day of the Steam Festival, I came into the office with Sherry at the time, and Alex was sitting there with a very concerned look. And we were getting impressions and shares on Twitter and all of this information about our game saying it was live on Steam. And so we went on our Steam page and there was no build there. We still weren't live because we hadn't uploaded a build yet. But Steam had not completely opted us out of the festival. So our game was still visible and it was on the front page of the Steam Festival and people were clicking on it and trying to download it and it wasn't working. So we burnt through how many impressions?
Yeah, so
on our Steam page.
I rocked up at 9 a.m. and it was at 100,000 impressions. And there's no game. And I only found out to look at the impressions because we got tagged in a article from Brazil saying, play this game. And we're like, what? You can't play anything.
And the night before this event launched was actually the Game Awards night, which we ran an event for here in Adelaide. And we tried to convince George to come out to that night, but he said, no, I'm going to stay home and fix these bugs early so I get ahead of it, so that when we launch on the weekend, which is a few days away, our build would be ready. So if he had come out and socialized with us that night, he wouldn't have been able to quickly put a build up once we realized the Steam Festival was live. So shout out to George for being a good programmer and not letting us guilt him into coming out. But yeah, so we did lose a lot in that first run, and like the key takeaway there, I guess, is be very careful with how Steam systems work, because they're quite often very old and aged, and there are things that you can think have gone through, but it's always worth confirming, I guess, or even double confirming in our case. But we did have a build we could put up that day. There were still some hot fixes we had to sort out, but we'll get to that, but we had a build that we could upload. And then once the demo was live, it was pretty much up to Alex to keep it running and keep people engaged.
Continuous outreach, how we engage with players. So this is while the I guess we're talking about, it's a demo, yeah. So we left the demo up for a month. We were originally gonna just do it for the festivals and then pull it down. But there was still like a good core crowd, mainly that were on our Discord, who were trying to compete for the best time, figure out how the game works, stuff like that. So really we left it up. It was also good for talking to like other, like press, potential publishers, stuff like that, just having a version of the game up. So we decided to leave it up for the month. So in that time, we were still contacting streamers and stuff like that. And this is why there seems to be now there's systems in place. It seems to be that if you're a streamer, I don't know if anyone here is a streamer, so if you can confirm this for me, but it seems to be that once you hit like 100 followers, you don't need to be contacted the traditional ways, because you just won't hear back from them. And completely understandable, they would get inundated with stuff like that, play our games and stuff like that. So there are services now, which we're looking at, of basically they aggregate all the streamers together, they put them on a platform, they say, here are the games, request the keys. You have to request X amount of keys or you get booted off the platform. So it's in their best interest to keep playing them. So direct stream contacting I won't say it won't work, because this is a test case for this small team in this scenario, did not work. We even had someone who was I felt like was taunting us, because they were like, I'll get on it now. I'm like, okay, cool. And then an hour later, I'm downloading the game now. Okay, great. And then a day later, I have the game. I'm like, okay, this does nothing for me. Thank you, but I need to see this. Continue outreach, local press. We our old TAFE and uni ran a little story about us doing a demo. Would love to say that they're avid gamers and they stumbled upon it. We kind of nudged them in the direction, hey, remember us, we paid a lot of money. Here's a thing we did. Consistent social media. So our usual social media posting is 3 to 4 times a week. But during these events, it gets ramped up to every day. I did a talk on this recently, 2 years ago, about this, that you have to kind of tailor not so much your content of what you do to each platform, but how often you post. If you've got a Facebook, you don't post to that every day, because it's a different, you would know the vibe is different. Facebook more wants to see a polished kind of end product, where Twitter and Instagram are more almost one and the same. It's mainly just devs who just want to see what other devs are working on. If you're a team the size of us, your Twitter and Instagram followers are a huge chunk of them are just other devs. So they can be bombarded every day, multiple times a day even. Discord, we set up a Discord. We would just engage with them, get them to post their screenshots of the best times. Just encourage them to just keep chatting with us and stuff like that. Discord is a platform like no other. Like you really have to keep that alive. And because we only ran a demo, the game wasn't out. It has gone back into hibernation a bit, but hopefully we poke the bear soon and get them to come out and it'll be good again. And then Twitch developer stream. We, as part of GDEX, so Steam is meant to offer one if you're in the festival, but we weren't technically, so we didn't get, that's one bit we missed out on was that thing, but GDEX still did it, so we did that in my bedroom at like 6 a.m. while my dad was asleep in the next room. Those are always really good. The trick with this outreach is just how much can you empower other people to make content for you. And the best way is they have a version of the game and then they stream it. Not me.
So we had the demo out, we were having our outreach. The next step is obviously continued feedback from the people who are playing it, as well as then updating and hotfixing the game. Any bugs that would come up from people playing it that weren't caught in our QA passes, especially with how last minute the build going live ended up being.
We lost our QA pass in that few days.
Yeah. So thankfully, when it came to this beforehand, I had prepared knowing that patching was going to be a thing I needed to do. So I had a plan about how we were going to do this. We had our source control set up with branches that were, whenever we released a build, were pushed to a separate branch so that we could continue to develop things in the background while being able to hotfix anything that would necessarily come up without needing to undo changes. So I can't stress enough how helpful that is if you've got any kind of source control. I'd recommend having source control for a start, but making sure you understand how the branching system works so you can separate out your release branches and quite easily iterate those out into hotfixes while developing whatever the next major patch or minor patch is going to be. During the month we had the demo up, there were quite a few features that were added to the game through this process of patching, which wouldn't have been possible if I didn't have a plan. Initially on the first day, there were 2 hotfixes straight away that needed to be made. And while I was working on the next patch content we were going to do, those hotfixes still needed to be done and pushed. So thankfully I didn't have to undo anything. I could just jump between 2 branches. One of the major features we added was Ghost Mode, which did get a lot of positive feedback. Just a version of the runner that emulates what you did the last time you finished a run and your best time. So that got us a lot of positive feedback, and I was glad I could get that in. A few other things we tried. We did a second runner.
But that one wasn't serious. I sent him a video of me and my partner playing with just a second runner in the level with nothing hooked up, and I'm like, can you make this work in like a couple of days? And he just had like an angry face back.
It's like, no.
Well, okay, sequel maybe.
Same for the sequel. Another thing we did actually manage to get in was the loadout. So it was one of the things we'd initially had in the scope of the demo, which when we came towards releasing it, never quite made it in. But with how smoothly things had kind of been, we decided to throw something back and we extended the time we were having the demo up. And as part of that, we threw in the loadout system where players could swap out different stats for their character and try out the runs in different ways. Adding some extra support just in our controller icons, we got some feedback from some of our players that they actually hook up a Switch controller or a PlayStation controller rather than an Xbox One to their computer. And all of our buttons by default were all Xbox. So it did have the capability to determine if you're using a keyboard or you're using a controller, but it didn't know what kind of controller. So we did some integration with Steam systems and had some auto switching based on what controller it was. And if that didn't work, there was a little option in the options menu so you could set statically what your icons were. And
should DualShock have worked, by the way? Like if I plugged in a DualShock controller, was that going to work?
If you had your Steam set up, it should have, but yeah.
You hear that, Michael? It should have worked. It's on you.
That's right. And then just various bug fixing. We did set up a Steam, was it a Google Doc we set up?
Feedback, yeah.
Yeah, we had a little Google Doc as a feedback form that we posted in various places, mostly in our Discord, because that was where most of our avid players they were all in our Discord. So they gave us a bunch of bugs that they found, and that also helped in terms of QA. So I can't stress enough how much it helps having that contact and something like a Discord, where an easy way for players to communicate any issues they're having, because they may just play the game in a different way to you that causes something to happen which you wouldn't have caused ever. We've had that happen a few times.
We'll flag that as well. I'm not sure if we talk about this later, but with those Google forms and things like that, you'll never get feedback from players that just didn't like the game. Like, they're not going to spend their time, insulting your game or anything like that. They're just going to switch it off. Then you have to rely on analytics to get any more information. Oh, okay.
Talk about analysis.
That's more on you, Alex, I think. I remember who we get first. Oh, no, feedback. I'll go for that one first. So we did have analytics through Steam after running the demo, and the first thing we noticed is that our average playtime was about 6 minutes. So we had, I think it was 2,000 something people downloaded, but the playtime was about 6 minutes, which is below average. And we've had no feedback from people that had that playtime. The only people we've been getting proper feedback from had played more than that. Just even from the feedback, I could tell that they'd seen things in the game that you wouldn't have found within 6 minutes. So basically, a lot of people were playing the demo and then just switching it off and not giving us any information as to why. That being said, we got some very valuable things externally from the Steam demo, which is getting people to actually record videos of themselves playing it for the first time and talk it through, and having a camera pointed at them and the screen to get both. So basically, a stream, but as part of playtesting. And actually analyzing the streams themselves gave us a ton of information about where players were struggling. We had a tutorial issue where basically you get told all the moves, then you get put in a situation where you need to use them all, and then brought back to a checkpoint after you were supposed to have learnt all the moves. So you got stuck in an endless loop, and that would be 6 minutes, turn it off. So our demo, because we'd focused so much on getting all the features in there and polished, we hadn't focused on progression. And once again, without a convention and something like that to get people familiar with everything, it was just all the information at once, and they just had trouble sort of working everything out all together. But the players who did stick around got really into the time trial aspects for us. And players who dropped off just don't leave feedback. And then, we had a lot of analytics from the demo itself.
Yeah, we had a lot of analytics. We recorded everything we could. So that's everything that Steam does automatically, and then everything that we could get from. So Steam has a little thing in it where you can, if you have Google Analytics, you can plug in your little code to find out everything about the person. Not everything about the person. Basically, we can find out, the stuff I was interested in was what country are they from, what language are they speaking. Not to be creepy, it's because then I go, okay, well, here's a good place to start for our markets. So, for example, Australia wasn't our biggest market, it was America. Is that because we were in GDEX and we were in a Steam festival, which is, dominated by the Northern Hemisphere, maybe. But then, Russia was in there and stuff like that. So it's a bit all over the joint. Language, so we know what's first priority for localization. How long they spent on the page, the stuff like that. Okay, so the two festivals destroyed our data. Instead of just boring you with the graphs and showing you everything, basically, our Steam page was up for 2 weeks before the demo launched. So our impressions and page views. I said before, we had 100,000 impressions. That's if your little tile of your game shows up. That's a impression. Page view is when it's clicked on, and a click-through rate is how many people, as far as Steam is concerned, what a click-through rate is. It's different if you're doing other web stuff, but Steam considers a click-through that they've seen your impression and they've clicked on it. For the 2 weeks before, our page views and impressions were there, and then the demos happened and they went bang. I think we hit 1.4 million views by the end of the festival. and then went straight back down. So that destroyed the data. Like you have to delete it to actually see what the natural decline is or incline. And the click-through rate went from 30%, which is saying 1 in 3 people who see your tile click on it, to 0.4 or 0.04%. But 0.04% of 1 million people is still 5,000 people clicking on it. So that just completely dropped. So again, it destroyed the analytics unless you purposely remove those, and you can see. Yeah, and the most we could do, because we can't actually track a lot of Steam stuff, we can't track, who's actually downloading it and stuff like that. We can only track who's clicking on the page and then clicking on a link, which you would hope is the download link. You can find out who those people are. But if you're about to do your first game, definitely recommend Steam Festival, because as I said, 1.4 million impressions. That's incredibly valuable. But also get a Google ad tag thing going, get the analytics that you can. You don't have to worry about any privacy policies, because that's them collecting the data. I even asked them, I was like, do I need to include some message? I said, nope, our privacy policy covers that. So hate to break it to you, but you're getting tracked by Steam. But in this scenario, you want people getting tracked by Steam, basically.
I mean, that's still,
Is that still me?
will do, yeah. Traction.
Traction, who stuck around? Oh, okay. So yeah, after. I guess is this after the demo? I think so.
Yeah, you're stuck right now.
I'll be on the.
It's like during to after.
Yeah, during to after. Okay, so I said for the Discord community, they were still sticking around. Oh, they're still there. Thank you if anyone here is in that Discord community. But it naturally died off because there wasn't anything for them to play. So, we have been pushing updates and stuff to them. Something we have to invest more time in is keeping that going. The wish list, that was another one that died down. But as I said before, with the click-through rates and stuff, the people who are visiting the page now and clicking on the wish list are the ones who are probably more interested, rather than getting hyped up in a festival, clicking all the links, seeing what's there and wish listing. That's evident by the fact that the click-through rates has gone up back to where it was, while the clicks and views have gone down. And yeah, we still do continued updates on social media to keep it going. And yeah, I think that's it.
So then we've got our demos out there. We've learned a lot from it. We've all taken a week to sort of digest everything and try not to take the feedback from heart, which is always a fun one. And so from there, we had to take everything that we learned and work out, based on our final scope for the game, what needed to change from the feedback we had. And the biggest things we learned in that was, using those analytics, we needed a bit of an overhaul in the way our abilities worked. So having people learn everything all at once is even in a small game, is tough, especially with demos like that. So we knew before our next demo, we had to get our progression system in there. And with that, we did a bit of an overhaul of our abilities along with that, to make them a bit more easy to pick up, and constantly having prompts and things like that so players don't forget anything. On top of that, we just overhauled our core momentum to be a bit more smooth, so all the players that really felt a bit stuck and things like that could have a smoother experience. We also sat down and talked about our scope, and the thing about that is that we had all these features we wanted to put in the game, and even though we gutted them out of the demo, we still intended to put them in. But now we knew we had to spend more time on some of our core mechanics, so we had to really sit there. And I think that's the thing with scope anyway. It's always going to be very flexible, and you can't get heart set on one particular thing. If the players want something else and they want you to refine something, sometimes you have to, sometimes you can just deal with what they get, I suppose. But we reprioritized what's next, and we focused on features that would be for this demo, this upcoming next demo we've got. And yeah, we compared that against our plans for releasing on different platforms to adjust our sort of time frame in the long term. And then we talked more about marketing, as always, for this next demo. It sort of always pieces. I mean, game design and marketing are completely in sync at all times. They have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we decided this time we're going to go for some funding into our marketing campaign. Like organic reach is always going to get us the best, but we want to get people in front of the game.
Yeah. Fund a campaign. Okay, so this next demo, because we're putting money behind the marketing, I want to say it's no, I won't say that bit. This is a practice run basically for hopefully in the next few months when we actually release. So that's one of the reasons why I'm putting money behind it. Second, maximize reach. Oh, okay, yeah. So maximize reach to the relative audience. Yeah, if you're smart with like this. Okay, I will say what I was going to say. It costs a lot of money to do this, and we don't have a lot of money, so you have to be smart with it. So one thing you have to do with Facebook makes it easy now, and YouTube and all that. I say that while we're getting someone else to help us with that. But
get a marketing consultant.
yeah, get a marketing consultant. Maximize the reach. So, target the right people. So as I said before, because I got the analytics down from last time, I know we have a good following in America, Australia, Germany, some other places. I know that that's where I want to prioritize the ads first. Again, I don't know if that's our core audience. That's why this is the practice run for the full thing. But if you tell Facebook or whatever that you want to spend X amount of money on this ad and that's it, then they're going to serve it to people who aren't interested in your game, and you're charged either per the view, per the click, or something like that. No, charged per the view, not always per the click. So it's going to get wasted on the wrong people. Especially recently, Apple and Facebook have been at each other's necks, and I think basically Apple's not sharing the data with Facebook of who's using what. So I don't have an iPhone, but I imagine if you have an iPhone lately on Facebook, you're getting ads that aren't relevant to you anymore because Facebook doesn't know what you're into. Approach streaming. Yeah, and then the next thing is, as I said before, we're going to put money behind approaching streamers because instead of paying for 1 million clicks, we pay one area to generate 1 million clicks X amount of times through each streamer or whatever, Again, it goes back to empowering other people to make content for you. It's going to be faster and get you more results.
And yeah, I mean, that's our talk. So I guess one thing I will add in, because it's going to tie into your talk, is we didn't have automation set up completely for our builds, and that is absolutely something we are going to do for the next one. I'm hoping I'll be able to help. But yeah, that's our talk. So any questions?
So you're saying that you've got quite a few hits from Germany. Does that mean you're going to get someone to translate the English instructions into another language so that it's easier to get more of the help for that?
Yeah, potentially. Sorry, so just repeat the question. The question was, because of our analytics, we found that we had a strong following in Germany. Are we going to spend money into translating it into German? Let's have the team meeting right now.
Well, that sort of thing. I think we need more information from this next demo. We're not going to make any localization calls until close. It's going to be very last minute for us, to be honest, for localization. But based on our next demo and then any sort of ramp up marketing, I think we're going to get better numbers.
Just to continue with that, is there a lot of things that can be directly translated just by visuals as opposed to written text?
Are there things that can be translated by visual rather than text? I think we've been very careful to try and keep our text down in our game already. I think trying to give people, our game is very fast paced, so trying to give people the most information as quickly as possible has always, been at the forefront. I think we've had discussions about that since day one. We've been do we say explain something, or do we try and find a way to show it? And how do we decide scope for that? And what can we just have to accept as text, and what can we, spend more time making more visual?
Yep. Andrew.
You guys got a new trailer on YouTube, the demo, or was that not really ready considering this shut down the door?
Trailers. Okay. The question was, did we run a new trailer for the demo? We have run new trailers for pretty much every demo we've done.
Yeah, every
but
event.
It's always been very much us on the back foot trying to put a trailer together. I think for release we're going to spend a lot of time building a trailer, but so far it's been very much trying to use gameplay and then edit it to be, as streamlined as possible. Like we've got some pretty good dynamic cameras in the game now that make that easier, but we haven't done a fully edited trailer, with like special cameras set up in the game with like focal length and all that sort of stuff. Just yet, or like sequences, cinematics and things. But we would like to.
So you said that you went through all the people going through the blind playtest run with cameras and cameras on the screen of them. Did you all watch it together, or did you guys just split up the load of how many recordings per person?
Well, we didn't have that many for this. So the question was, how do we spread out the footage of people watching the game and playing it, like for playtests and QA purposes, I imagine. We mostly got that through people streaming it. So we'd watch the streams back from this demo, but we also have some people in the industry and stuff like that who are willing to do that kind of things. Only a couple of them, so we weren't going off a huge amount of videos. So I think it was mostly us watching the streams, and then I watched a couple of other playtest ones on my own. And then we just put that information together, and we were lucky because it was very consistent with what where people were having issues. But right now we're actually looking at services for that sort of thing. There's a few online playtests and QA companies where you can get people they even have eye tracking and things like that. So I don't know how much of that we can fit in, but it's really seeing someone play it without you there is just the most valuable feedback I think I've ever seen.
Did you say that you won an award for best music for a demo?
It was nominee.
It was. So we were nominated for best sound. So we didn't win the award, but we were in a pool of about 5 nominees.
Yeah,
I think,
4.
out of all the entries.
Yeah.
So they nominate to get nominations for demos. So it doesn't have to be a finished product.
No, it was everyone who was in the GDEX festival. So it could have been a finished game or it could have been a demo. Ours just happened to be a demo.
Did you find that helped you with marketing at all, or getting?
I think so. I think it definitely would have helped. It's hard to tell. Not hard to tell. It would take a lot to look in to see what time people clicked on stuff. It would have helped with people who were at GDEX or were following that event. It definitely helped when we, posted about it. And now we have the little badge there, or the little thing in our Steam page that says it was nominated. So that'll keep ongoing. But hard to tell if it. I would imagine it would have helped. Yeah.
Just for a little bit, it meant that I couldn't say this game that I got the sound for won this award, but I was nominated for this award, which helped with marketing through my Twitter. So which kind of then went back to the game. So it was a little bit, but it all helps.
Yeah.
I think we found with any of these events, from the live action, from the PAXs and AvCons and GDEX, things like that, they always have their own sort of awards or roundups or anything like that. And it's really easy to get nice quotes and taglines out of that sort of stuff, and award nominees, just things to fill out your sort of list of famous things. I think we still have a GameSpot quote on our on our sort of when we do our business to business stuff, and that quote is from someone that did a roundup of PAX games. So it wasn't an awards or an article just about us, but we can say we've got a quote from GameSpot. We can just put that everywhere.
Yeah.
So any of those sort of awards, using them everywhere in your branding, it's just, it's always beneficial.
Do you have numbers on how many other games went into the festival demos, and did you get a position on the front page throughout the whole festival?
The question was, do we get numbers on how many games there were in the Steam Festival, and were we on the front page? I don't think we could work out how the front page was calculated because our game kept on jumping around.
Mm.
I knew that one thing we did discover is because we had technically opted out of the festival, we weren't in any of the actual breakdown lists. So if you search platformers, you wouldn't see our game because we weren't tagged there. But we were still just on the front page roundup And I think it was a rotation or something.
It randomized because you'd see sometimes it'd come up and be a little tiny button in the bottom right, and other times it's one of the big buttons up the top, and it's like just depending. You hit randomize and refresh enough, eventually we just popped up there on the front page. So, did we get analytics about how many games
are on there? No. It was something I was meant to look up and check, but no. I would hazard a guess. I'm making this up. I want to say no more than 1,000, but I have no idea.
I think Steam says thousands of games.
Yeah, probably thousands of games. Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something I need to. I was meant to look up out of curiosity, but if the thing is like, if our thing went in when it wasn't meant to be in, and we didn't really have much of a push behind it, and in the first hour, 2 hours, or maybe hour, 2 hours, we had 100,000 impressions, and that just shows how many people are on this event who are like, looking for games and stuff like that. Like how important it is to be a part of this, even if you don't, like you can only do this once apparently, according to them. You can only be in one seasonal festival with a demo, but do it because
or cheat the system by accident.
Yeah.
Do 2 of them.
Yeah, sign up and then pull out.
I think the main thing with these festivals is that you're supposed to do it within a certain window of release.
Yes.
As well.
So that was one of the reasons why we postponed the autumn one, was because we were like, well, our game's probably going to come out next year, and we don't know when. And the autumn one said your game had to be out by March this year, I think. And we're probably not going to hit that, so it's better. And then there's going to be another festival, and that I think is up to, I don't know, November if your game's coming out, something like that. Yeah. Cool.
Cool. Thanks for listening.